Hey guys, Mark checking in. So I watched Red Bull Kumite with Gobou in it, the Strive event, and it was pretty awesome. It was great seeing Zato kind of crush the competition. But yeah, so I just wanted to make this video, match analysis, to go over the stuff that Gobou did and kind of point out the stuff I thought was interesting and stuff that I would like to kind of incorporate in my own gameplay. I took a ton of notes. I'm actually not gonna run replays. I'm just gonna look at my notes and reproduce the different situations that happen in the lab and just show you the different options and stuff that I took into consideration. Now I'm gonna try to go fast because I wrote down a ton of stuff and I don't want this to be a super long video. So yeah, I'll just go ahead and get right into it. So the first setup was in round one. Gobou was in the cornered by Faust. So a lot of times the way you get out of the corner is you'll super jump into JD. This is pretty good because it moves you pretty fast, but it does come with its risks, mainly the tons of landing recovery that you have. So if the opponent is really competent, they'll try to stay out of your jumping normal range and then try to poach your landing. Maybe even get a punish as you land. So what Gobou did is it was really interesting. Now, one thing you can do is you can PRC right away to just create as much distance as quickly as possible and keep you safe. But what he chose to do is he actually did a drift RC back into the corner and got Faust into the PRC range. So if Faust had gone for an anti-air, or if he was just waiting, the PRC slowdown would be just enough to probably prevent Faust from effectively anti-airing him. So he was able to, come down with JS and then go for a 2D knockdown, which I thought was really cool. Okay, so the next setup I want to talk about was in, let me see, round 2 versus Apology Man. So he was in the corner scrambling. I'm pretty sure he was out of Eddy meter, and he ended up getting an air throw into the corner. Now, what I thought was really cool, I always appreciate looking at how Gobou covers the wake-ups when he doesn't have Eddy meter. So basically, if he has Eddy meter, he's just going to make you block Eddy and go for a mix-up. But when he doesn't have Eddy meter or he's waiting for it to come back, he has like really valuable sequences that give him like the best opportunity to waste the opponent's time until Eddy can come back or potentially lead to another knockdown where you can run Eddy pressure. So what he ended up going for here is meaty drill, and then he jailed that into 5K. Now the thing about 5K is this is a new change of the patch. You can always jump cancel 5K, but now they made it so that you can cancel jump cancels into blue RC, which has way better slowdown properties than the red roaming cancel. So you can get a ton of advantage. So let me see. Yeah, so basically it looked like this. He did this. Oops. Oh my god. Yeah, that. Now, I think what Gobou did is he ended up doing this into this into this. But I'm pretty sure you can just do like 5H into this. And the block sound would probably be enough to either frame trap or jail into that. So he basically bought himself enough time and basically just, safely jailed a projectile on wake up, meaty projectile on wake up into Zato's high-low mix-up. So the mix-up is between JD or landing and going 2K. And I believe what he did is, you use spikes, which uses half of your Eddy meter. So he ended up going low, and you need to use Pierce after this, since Pierce is the only thing that doesn't use half or all of your Eddy meter. So he did 2K into dash 5P, I believe. And he just block confirmed that and decided to go for throw for the next round of mix-ups. So, oops. So he probably went for something like that. But the options are pretty limitless. When you're in this situation, there's all sorts of different setups that you can go for. All of which Gobou has put to good use, in this tournament. So all the kinds of stuff I just showed you here are decent options and more. I think you can even go for the throw at a different time, like right there. Very difficult to block all of this. Now the next setup I want to point out was round 4 versus Apology Man, and this is kind of a common theme that Gobou did in the tournament. Is a lot of times he's really good at hit and block confirming Eddie in neutral. So on block, it's pretty obvious when you get the opponent to block Pierce what your best options are to go for to create the best, mix up or advantageous situation afterwards. But what I was really impressed the whole tournament is he was able to hit confirm the second hit of Pierce, which is a launcher, and then pressure the opponent, either meaty or Eddie pressure on the opponent's wake up. He basically never missed a single knockdown. If he got hit by Pierce or Frog in neutral, he just treated it as a knockdown and used his remaining Eddie meter to force you to block and then mix you with the second or with the third, call of Eddie. So in this particular situation, he empty summoned Eddie and moved him forward. This is something he did a lot in the tournament, and he chose Pierce and saw that the second hit of Pierce hit like that. So what he did is he ran down Faust and meted with 5k. So he chose 5k over 2k because it has more active frames. Now here are some of the options. I think he went for this into Pierce and then did the sandwich trick. So he sandwiched Pierce with 5k and then Gatling that into 5d, and the second hit of Pierce causes those to cancel into each other. So I'll show you what it looks like. Yeah, so you can see it's a really good. It basically is exactly what you wanted. It's as if the opponent got more kind of corner carry than before, but you have to have the good awareness to see that the opponent got hit or would get hit by the second hit of Pierce, and then be able to know what to do next and have the setups ready. So that was one option. Here's another option. You can go for 2k 2D. You can also go for dust pressure. Oops. And oops. You can go for like opposed pressure as well, either into that or grab or whatever. So really good options when you're chasing down the opponent. I thought that was just something worth mentioning. Now, the third setup I'd like to talk about was off of a YRC. I think he got a YRC kind of mid-screen on Faust, and then ended up going for a pretty standard opener, YRC into 2S to catch backdash, and then that, right? Or I guess, 2Ace to reach. And that, and then he ran him down and did close slash 5D, and that was all blocked. Now, one thing I really liked from Gobou this tournament is how he used Roman cancel to continue pressure when he ran out of Eddie meter. So I thought this was something really clever. So he did this and saw that the opponent blocked 5D into Frog. Now, he used blue Roman cancel to give him, while Frog was hitting, to increase the block stun of the second hit of Frog, and then went for another dust immediately afterwards. So that first dust, most people are looking for dust after close slash, but very often he would use meter to fit in dust in places where he wouldn't typically be able to combo off of dust with Eddie. So obviously in this case, Eddie had run out, and most people in this situation would just do dust into RC, and then if they got hit by the dust, well, now you can if they got hit by the dust, now you can go into a wall break combo. But the problem with that is if you wall break the opponent and you can't kill them on that hit, then now you've just sent them back to neutral. So I thought it was very clever. He pre-RC'd with blue RC, and then went for dust and was able to combo that into 2K2D. And just like the previous situation, he then went for meaty drill and then followed that up with more meaty pressure. And of course, at that point, you can choose between throwing the opponent or staggering buttons or getting away with break the law. But you have a lot of options, and all the time, your eddy meter is very close to coming back. So it pressures the opponent to actually try to challenge you. Whereas, if you just go back to neutral and you're waiting out eddy, it's free range for your opponent. You're giving them an opportunity to beat you. So I'll just go ahead and show you what that setup looked like on hit. It was crouching. So yeah, frog hit, right? Like that. Sorry, was blocked. And he did blue Roman cancel. Oops. Set it to guard. He did blue Roman cancel into dust. And now all of a sudden you see you can get the meaty drill, and then it's when it's meaty, it's like, it could +5, +10, maybe even more, and you can go for more pressure. Either run up into one of your lighter buttons to give you more option, or try to lock them down with 5H or far slash or something like that. All right, so this next setup is kind of become infamous. Gobou's become infamous for using this one, and it's his version of the break the law mix-up. So the one I usually go for is out of sandwich pressure. It looks like this, where I will cross the opponent under in between the hits of Pierce while I'm sandwiched and go for that break the law mix-up. Now, I've seen Gobou do that before, I guess, in the early days of the game, but he actually avoids going into sandwich pressure pretty much at all costs. If you watch him play, he doesn't go into it very often, only when he's kind of forced into it. And so he honestly doesn't go for that one very much, but he does go for this one to close out games. I think he was in the corner, backdashed into Pierce or backdashed into 2S Pierce, and then ended up going into spikes like this. And anytime he has spikes on you and he's running at you, he'll cross under you while the spikes are running and cross you up with frog. So I'll set the opponent to guard first only and show you what it looks like. So he'll do something like this. Oh, oops. And do that. And it actually, if you have enough meter for super, it does a ridiculous amount of damage for closing out rounds. So it's actually, he did this maybe 3 or 4 times in the tournament. Is where he'll get you to block spikes mid-screen, run up at you, and you're so afraid of trying to react to the dust or react to the low that you just get smoked by the cross-up frog. Now, the secret is frog has some travel time, right? Especially since spikes doesn't move eddy forward. So you want to call frog before you are done crossing under. So, like, you're just tapping frog, like, as soon as eddy recovers, and you may not be fully crossed under, but by the time frog gets to them, you will be. Now, I think I mentioned before, but Gobou didn't really use frog all that much in the tournament. He mainly just used it to keep the opponent in the corner or in certain setups. Combos, of course, as well. But when he does use frog, it's interesting to see the different ways he goes about actually pressuring the opponent afterwards. Now, I saved a whole bunch of different examples of him cycling through lots of different options, but here's one in particular that he used. One second. So I'll set him to guard alt. I think he got another YRC near the corner. So he got a YRC and ended up going for far slash into frog. I guess because last time he did YRC, he did this. So I guess he assumed that Apology Man would try to adapt and jump out of the 2S into Pierce setup. So this time he went for this. Now the thing about it is when you do frog has the longest recovery of all the other eddy moves. So typically you have to go out of your way. You have to do extra moves to keep the opponent blocking or pressured long enough for Eddie to kind of recover from doing frog and actually be able to accept his next negative edge input. So in this situation, I'll just get near the corner. He did this, and he did 2K 2D into drill. Basically, you're looking for any 3 hits. I'll show you, I guess, all the different things that I have seen Gobou do after frog gets blocked. So in this case, he did this, delayed the pierce, and went for sandwich pierce pressure. I believe he actually sandwiched with 5K, so I think it looked like this. And I think he went for that setup. But here's a few other options. So I've also seen him go for this. He'll go for 2 jabs. And you can go for the exact same setup like that. The other good thing about this is because jab is only -2, you can go for very fast tick throws. And this one is also it's mid-screen friendly. Whereas some of the other ones aren't. Now, if you are in the corner, you can threaten a low on the run-up. So you can do this. Because obviously, they're going to be afraid of you doing something like that too, right? You can run up and use your meter to get a dust in a place that you're not supposed to. And I've recorded examples of this. Gobou does this all the time. Even when Eddie's out, sometimes he'll just use 5D into dust. 5D into RC, even when he has Eddie out, just because he knows you did a move that would put Eddie in recovery, and you're not expecting to be forced to block high at that time, which is really interesting. So because you're afraid of that high, you can also do that, and that'll combo into it, and you'll do you have a few options. You can do pierce after that, so it looks like this, and that all combos. You can also, this is really tricky, you can do this into a pose and go for throw setups. If you just want to go for dust, you can just go 5K or close slash into dust. But that's pretty much most of the options. You're either going to cancel out of the recovery with Drunkard Shade, you're going to go for multiple hits, either 2 or 3 jabs, or 2K 2D into drill, since that's the other way to get 3 hits. That is more ambiguous than just going for mids, like that. That's basically how he kind of approaches frog. So I mentioned that Gobou likes to empty summon and then move Eddie forward and then go for an Eddie move after this, right? Now, something he did in the 7th round versus Apology Man is he noticed that Faust was hesitating when he would summon, I guess probably trying to react and do the appropriate poke to kill Eddie. So he recognized some hesitation, empty summon, and then started running up with Eddie. And then did a pose right here in Faust's face once Faust kind of recognized what was going on. Now, after that, I guess since you're not putting your opponent in blocks, then they could jump out. So he ran up and went for 2H into Drunkard Shade. So you can see how that would work. He did something like that, and then went into standard sandwich pressure. Now, Gobou doesn't go for sandwich pressure that often, but this was one of the only times all tournament that he did. I don't remember exactly how he got the hit, but probably something like that into dust and then comboing into super. But I just thought that was an interesting option. If you notice that your opponent's hesitating, you can use the threat of Eddie being out to, I guess, close the distance, and then also keep it kind of safe to throws as long as your opponent really is trying to react to what you're doing. Okay, so in the last round versus Apology Man, that's when he started bringing out the command grab, the Damn Fang. So I was really interested to see what Gobou would do on Damn Fang Oki. And so his general strategy, I guess I'll cover it as the setups come up in chronological order. But in this particular example, he got Damn Fang in the corner like that. Let me make sure it's blocking. So he got Damn Fang in the corner and went for 5H. Oops. So I know Damn Fang is +7. So let me see what the frame advantage is on 5H. 1 second. Looking up. Zato. 5H has a 13 frame startup. So it gives 6 frames for the opponent to do something. And I guess at this distance, he assumed that probably the 6 frame moves would either whiff or that Apology Man would be, I guess, too afraid of the other options to go for them. So this way you get all the active frames of 5H, and it frame traps into Pierce, which is a really good advantage of getting the opponent to block 5H. So that's exactly what he did. He did Damn Fang, meatied with, well, it's not meaty, he pressured with 5H, which will also ground on jump. Here, I'll show you guys. If you set the opponent to jump, it won't frame trap their jump, but it will. Okay, I may have left. Yeah, see, no, yeah, it'll ground them if you time it properly, and that way you can then jail into Pierce or frame trap into Pierce on block. So that's exactly what he did. Let me turn this off. He did this into Pierce, and typically he would cancel out of Pierce like this, because, you know, if you cancel Pierce into this, then all of a sudden you get high-low mix. And if you think the opponent's going to jump, you can do this, and then go exactly for your options that I showed you before on those other setups. But what he instead chose to do is he, yes, assumed Apology Man would just respect the Pierce gap this time. And he did Pierce and ran up and immediately did Dust. So that's the advantage of the corner. A lot of times mid-screen, because the opponent's kind of far away, you have to check them with 2K or 5K or close slash first before you can go into Dust. But what Gobou does is when he's in the corner, he really likes these setups where he goes into Dust as the very first thing that he goes for, just because it's way harder to react when you don't have a tell. It's like, you know how Angie players, they don't go for Fujin into mix unless if they need Fujin to check backdash or something. They'll almost always cancel the button straight into the Fujin mix. It's the same principle. Why give your opponent a close slash to then kind of prime them into the follow-ups when you could just go for Dust right away, especially when that's still where you're threatening like a 2K into other things. So that's exactly what he did. He just did this to check the jump after that, and went straight for that into 5D into Eddie. Now the thing about it is, he still has Eddie left, right? He still has Eddie meter left. Let me see. I'm gonna go back to the notes. It looks like the opponent got hit. So if you get hit by, that's another advantage of Pierce, because Pierce and then into Frog still leaves you with Eddie meter. So he got the hit with that and was able to wall splat into unsummon into super. So that way you get to deal more damage with your higher damage super on the wall break and still conserve your Eddie meter. But even if the opponent had blocked, this is another thing that he did, that he likes to do. He'll go for 5D into Frog, like this. And I told you, he'll go for another Dust right away, because typically you just did Frog, so you need to do like close slash or one of those, you know, 3-hitting strategies to buy time for Eddie to recover. But you can use meter instead to get that early Dust and catch the opponent off guard. But that's just one of many options that he can go for. All right, So the next thing I want to cover is, and this is basically the new fancy route that everyone's doing since the patch came out. And Gobou, as far as I could tell, there's lots of different scenarios that lead into this route. I'll show you what it looks like. But Gobou pretty much only does it off of single hits into Red Roman cancel. So you want to get the opponent either slowed down or in a counter hit, or getting hit by Frog on the way back. But you want to minimize the number of hits to set this up. So you can't just go into it from any combo. But the whole idea is you want to empty summon the Frog and go for the one hit of Frog into 2S, then the second hit of Frog into 2H, and cancel 2H into another Frog. And it's really high damaging, and the most important thing is you can use 2 Frogs and still have any meter left to either run up and continue your combo, to media the opponent's wake up into super, or to unsummon and then continue pressure that way. So let me see if I can get the combo. I'm not as good as other people. Yeah, just like that. And then you can unsummon and break the wall. Or whatnot. But it's very high damaging. Pretty much anytime you can go for it, you should be going for the setup. It has really good properties and allows you to unsummon. And so yeah, I guess if you want to emulate Gobou, this is a good place to start as being one of the places to look for that. He just got a jab punish into RC and knew he could go for it. Okay, so in the first round versus Bombaban, he pulled out one of his other Damfang Oki setups. So before, he showed off doing command grab into 5H, right? But because you're +7 on Damfang, this is a 7-frame move, so you can actually kind of melee with this. It's a really good option for preventing the opponent from challenging you. So against Soul, I guess he was checking Soul's jump by doing 2K and then canceling it into oppose. So this just happened. I'll just show you what the whole setup looks like. He did this. Into that. So basically what it does is, this is really good, and he probably plays Bombaban, so I think he just assumed Bombaban really knows what Zato is capable of. So if you go for this, if you want to try to then summon Eddie afterwards, there's going to be a mashable gap, pretty much no matter what you do, except for if you use oppose. So this covers, really aggressive players who are trying to check you with buttons when you're close up. But of course, you want to go for your fast. So that's kind of the trade-off. You either go for your slow move, which can interrupt on Oki, but then once they've blocked it, it jails into Eddie. Or you can go for your fast move to prevent your opponent from acting immediately, but then you need to play it safer with Eddie. So that's exactly what he did. This time he went for the fast option into the anti-mash tool. And then you just need to get your opponent to block so that you can then cancel out of Eddie. Now, you don't want to do this and then immediately cancel, because as soon as you start to cancel, you're very, very vulnerable. Oppose will go away and allow you to get counter hit. So you always want to make your opponent block while you're being protected by oppose, and then cancel that into an Eddie move. And he chose Frog because, again, he's just trying to choose the thing that covers the most options. Just make it so that basically no matter what the opponent chooses to do, jump or challenge, always they're going to feel threatened that something could blow them up at any option. So he decided to go for the thing that would cover jump in this situation as well, since you're going to be less likely to be, I guess, mashing after far slash when oppose is up. Let me see. I'll check my notes and see what he did after that. Oh, yeah. So he actually went for a sneaky unsummon. So I told you when you block Frog, you got a few different options, right? You can go for this, but the thing is, he already used some meter. Yeah, see, so you can't really get the strongest mix-up available. So he decided that he wanted to go for an unsummon instead. So what he did is he did this into one hit of spikes and then unsummoned after that. And it doesn't leave you plus, but it's pretty ambiguous. And because the spike is a kind of delayed projectile, it makes it so you're maybe a little closer to even on block. And you can definitely, kind of trick their opponent since they're looking for the follow-ups and kind of steal your turn back. So all in all, the setup would look something like this. Yeah, and then you unsummoned here, and then now you're still right here, so then all of a sudden, oh man, you can just steal your turn back. And it feels really bad to, to have your turns, stolen like that by Zato, and have him get all his meter back. Now the next setup I want to cover, actually it's almost exactly the same, happened in the same round, and this just shows how Gobou really gets in your head and mixes in his options to make it feel like you always feel bad no matter what you try to do, even if you remember what he did last time. So, like I said, he started off with this exact setup, right? The oppose into far slash into frog. And so he showed Bombaban that he's willing to do far slash into frog and that you shouldn't jump, right? That you should respect that, the frog, right? So once he got Bombaban, he noticed that, Bombaban didn't jump, right? He's now expecting the frog in this situation. He got into another situation where he got like a jab into oppose, far slash into far slash, okay? But this time, instead of canceling in the frog, he canceled into spikes. And then what that allowed him to do is go for, the classic high-low setup instead. And Bombaban he did block the spikes, but then I think he got smoked by the mix-up that came after that. Now I mentioned that one time versus Apology Man where he summoned and then ran up and did oppose, but against Soul he actually specifically liked to go for anti-DP kind of baits on Wake Up because no one likes getting DP'd by Soul. So what happens is one time he ended up getting like a instant air dash setup. Oops. Like an instant air dash JH. And then summoned Eddie like this. And what he did is he just threw a pose down and he'd run up and do 2H. The exact same setup that I showed before. 2H into Drunkard Shade. Now if the opponent, you can actually meaty with this. If the opponent just blocks, then you can go for sandwich pressure. Like that, for example. But if the opponent goes for a DP, I guess I can't really show it. I'll just say no guard, force counter hit. If the opponent, then you can probably go for a frog loop combo. It can actually be pretty difficult if the opponent's standing like this. If you saw them DP and they're in the air, then you can combo this into the frog. But, if they get counter hit on the ground for whatever reason, you can still notice that. And, just go for meaty spikes instead. And if they block that, then you're gonna get like a dust mix-up that you can go for. Okay, so this next setup is actually really important. So one of the big changes in the patch, it's that if Eddie is already out, then if you do a 236X command, it'll use less meter. Now this is really important because spikes and frog both take up exactly half of your meter. And if you do this, now they take up less than half. So you can do 2 full volleys of them and still unsummon or go for a third Eddie call. Really good. So what happens is any knockdown that knocks down for at least as long as 2D will allow you to empty summon. You cancel the like 2D into empty summon and then go for 236K to meet either Wake Up. Now this is really good because it allows you to do stuff like this. Oops. and then unsummon. Now, this is very plus on block, so you can then jail this into whatever you want. For example, you can jail it into close slash 5H and then resummon Eddie. And also, if they got hit by this jump dust, which is the high option, into unsummon. So you don't actually have to hit confirm it. You just do this into unsummon. Then Frog has enough knockdown and hit stun that you can still combo into close slash and lead into, not only did you unsummon, you can then lead into wall break and break the wall with the super. Deals a ton of damage because it's barely prorated at all. Only like 3 hits. The 2 hits of Frog, 1 hit of this, and then I guess a few more of like close slash and 2H. And so you're doing a ton of damage, and they're knocked down, and you unsummon Eddie. It's a really good situation to be in. So basically, Gobou, anytime he would knock you down in the corner, this was be his go-to setup. Is do 2D, cancel it into empty summon, and then 236K. Now that's not the only time he did it. In fact, the first time it came up, what happened is he was in the corner versus Soul and got a counter hit 6P. Recognized that it was a counter hit, and that this is roughly the same amount of knockdown as a 2D. Went ahead and canceled that into empty summon and got the exact same setup. So, like, that's just shows you his game awareness, right? He was fishing for 6P in the corner, got it, saw that it was counter hit, and knew exactly what setup to go into without any hesitation. So it just shows that he was looking for that. I mean, he was almost baiting the opponent into it. And that's the kind of gameplay that I kind of aspire to as well. Just keep things really simple, but know your options and have like actual strong setups that change the way the game is played. Like, for example, going for 1 extra setup off of 236K so you get double the mix-ups, or going for unsummons that wouldn't be possible otherwise. So I mentioned that recognizing when Eddie hits in neutral is like an extremely integral part of Gobou's gameplay, and something that really sets him apart is the fact that he can always pressure you with the right tools after whether you get hit or block Eddie. He's always prepared. But something else that he's always extremely prepared for is the opponent just avoiding Eddie in general, right? So there have been many times where where the opponent will jump. Yeah, sorry. There's many times where the opponent will jump Pierce, for example. But, other Eddie moves as well. And he's always seems prepared to 6P afterwards. And he's always prepared to not only the 6P, but also all the different permutations of what could happen. So if he gets a counter hit, he really likes to do this. And combo into Frog, like that. So he'll do 6P into 22H. Now the thing about it is, if you whiff 6P, you can just go for 6P into 22H. And then of course on counter hit it will all combo. But on whiff, so say for example the opponent kind of feints going in and then it whiffs. I'll see if I can generate that. So I'll say all guard, counter attack, jump. Say your opponent jumps this and you go for 6P. You can do 6P into 22H, and now you're holding down H, which is really useful. This came up quite a bit, where the 236P would get avoided, and then he'd be holding down H, and he was always prepared to then go into a pose afterwards. So this is pretty common. Or sometimes it would whiff, and he would go for example, this into 2K, this into 5K 2D. Now, if the 5K whiffs, then the dust won't come out, and he's still holding down kick, and because he just whiffed a button, he's in recovery, so you can press H to get a pose. You can also, if you don't have the same reaction speeds, you're still holding down kick, so you can use the faultless defense trick. You're holding down kick, so you can press back and H to get a pose, even if you waited a long time. So, like, for example, sometimes you do this, and the setup is 236p into 22H. So, say, for example, if they, like, jumped, like, that gap right there, right? So, you saw them block the first one, and you go for 2H. This happened many times to Gobou. And I'm sure he went 2S, 2H, sees that it whiffs, he's holding down 2H, and just lets go of 2H. And by the time the opponent tried to retaliate with a jump in, oppose is already down. If he's right on top of the opponent, usually he'll backdash, try to get the opponent to whiff throw, because they're trying to go for the throw tech at that point. And then oppose would hit them, they run up, Gobou will run up and either go for a burst bait, or he will, if the opponent doesn't have resources, he'll just finish the combo into super. But yeah, it's just a really valuable way to approach the game. You're holding down something. If you see that you've whiffed completely, you just have a split second to evaluate. If your opponent is coming at you, and this happened a lot in the Bomba Bun match, he'll 6p and then cancel that. Sometimes he'll just do 6p and then do like Pierce afterwards, and meaty with Pierce. So it'll look like, trying to see how I'm going to set this up. It's like this. And then he does a sandwich Pierce. Kind of like that. Like he'll do 6p, then he'll like delay a little bit while the opponent's landing. He'll meaty with Pierce and then fill that gap with 2p into 22H. And then, of course, that leads into your next Eddie move. Sometimes he'll do this and do 6p into 22H, which combos on counter hit. But then, if they block the 22H, then of course you can then just go into Eddie and try to mix up off of that. And then every once in a while he'll do 6p into Drunkard Shade as well. But yeah, if he notices that the opponent isn't really coming at him, that they're mostly like jumping back, and he sees that his approach whiffed, a lot of times it'd be the 5k or the 2S whiffed, then he'll go into oppose to just clean up that situation and leave the opponent as little an opportunity as possible for taking their turn. So definitely something I'm going to incorporate more into my game plan, really kind of ironing out all the different things I want to do to cover my whiffs and the different options. Okay, so the next setup that I recorded, it's actually just a permutation of what I showed before. So say you get a knockdown and you do the empty summon into 236k. If you don't feel confident in your ability to actually land the JD overhead on a crouching opponent, or if the opponent's like really short, honestly Ram is pretty short when she's crouching, then you can still go for 5D into Frog and unsummon, which will combo on hit and should give you at least a little bit of advantage, or leave you less unsafe on block as well. Of course, you can't cancel 5D into unsummon, which makes it less useful than this. I guess you can't cancel that either, but the landing, as soon as you land, you recover faster than if you were to just do 5D. But it is another option, and something that Gobou did. The dust ended up hitting, and he was able to unsummon and then combo that dust into Frog into a wall break super. Okay, so the next thing I wanted to show is, this is something that Gobou does a lot, actually. So if he has meter, there are many times when he has meter where he's just fishing for you to block this in neutral. Because if you get the opponent to block spikes, then that will frame trap into the super. Sometimes it'll even be gapless into the super, and then that will frame trap jump into the spikes. So basically, your opponent has to hold it. It's only when your opponent's blocking Frog. Oops, let me see if I can show it. Or when they're blocking... Yeah, see, that was gapless. Or when they're blocking spikes. So that's the time. Those are pretty much the only times he'll go for this unsummon route. Now, it first came up in, let me see, round 4 versus, I think it was the last round, versus Bombabon. and he was in a scramble situation after a wall break. I think he did this into this, and then got like a 6P knockdown. So what he ended up doing is I think he got a 6P knockdown. He had Eddie there, and then he went for that. Saw the opponent blocked it on their wake up, and then was able to restart pressure with sword super into spikes. So that just goes to show he never wastes an opportunity. You know, he got the counter hit knockdown with 6P, and then, or maybe it wasn't a counter hit. Either way, he got the knockdown with the soft knockdown with 6P, immediately started pressuring with the remaining Eddie meter, and then realized that he couldn't really convert that into a mix-up. But anytime you have a bar, you can always just end in spikes and start your pressure over again. And so Gobou used that to close out the round. All right. So in the first round versus skill, Gobou did, I guess, he mixed a few of the different things that I was talking about before. So this is, I showed you in neutral, sometimes he'll be fishing for spikes to go into sword super to reset pressure. But against skill, he ended up getting this other pressure sequence that led Dust into Frog into the super to kind of go for the same sort of pressure. So let me see what he ended up doing. So I believe they were close to the corner, and he empty summoned Eddie like this, and went for, oh shit. Wait, how'd she get hit? Alright, we're up. Oh, she set the jump. So he empty summon and went for this setup, right? Where he does first hit into pierce into this. So he basically he's fishing for 5D into Frog. And this is the thing with Gobou. It's like he will keep bombarding you with Dust over and over again because he wants you to look for it, right? Either you're guessing and you're getting hit by it because it's just could come at so many different times, or you're looking for it and then he can just get away with, you know, resets and all this other stuff. But he definitely pressures you with 5D more than anything else. But he doesn't even care if you block it as long as he has resources because of the way, you know, he can set things up. So I mentioned one thing he likes to do is he'll get you to block Frog, and then he'll just do Dust into another into RC, or sometimes he'll do the RC first and then Dust into a knockdown. So those are two options he did. This is another option that he did, which is that he sees that you block it because it has a lot of hits, and then he'll go for this pressure. Now, when you're point blank like this, right, you don't have to go for super into spikes. In fact, what he did is he chose to go for the pierce sandwich pressure instead because it gives you a few more options, it's a little more ambiguous. So he did the super like this, and then went for something like that where you're filling pierce, the pierce gap with different things, keeping things a little bit tighter and going for, I guess, more ambiguous setups. And that's something you can only do when you're really point blank. So it's actually a really nice setup, and it gives you more options, right? If you go for Dust into RC, that's one mix-up, right? If you go for this with your meter instead, now all of a sudden, you know, I don't know if you count that as 2 or 3 mix-ups. I mean, it's just, there's a lot of opportunities to get hit by like a lot of different things. I think you can, you know, there's like any number of things you could, you know, get hit by in this situation. So I thought it was just really nice how he mixes in all the different options and how, you know, one bar of meter can be used in so many different places. So he's not giving the opponent an opportunity to even review match footage and see how to deal with a certain situation, since there's always so many different ways to cover the different options on offense. Okay, so the next thing I wanted to point out happened, I I think round 4 versus Euro Legion. But he was doing this sort of stuff throughout the matches. This is just the first time I recorded it or highlighted it, at least in my notes. He was doing this thing where he would do. It's basically I showed you like some of the options he would go for when he had meter and has run out of Eddie, but then in the Euro Legion match, I guess it's just the way he had to play against Nago. There were many times where he would run out of Eddie meter, just trying to control neutral, and then he'd end up having to figure out what to do on block after he pushed the opponent to the corner. But before and he doesn't have meter to extend the block string or anything. He just has to wait for Eddie to come back, and kind of resolve the block string safely, without, I guess, giving away too much pressure. So, like, for example, like he'd do something like this. And now he has one opportunity. Now Eddie's out, right? So he had one opportunity to mix. So he did jump and then ended up going low. And this is what happens. He'll go 2K2D, right? Because it's really important. He wants to be able to hit confirm the 2K hitting because it is a mix-up. It's just you don't have Eddie to extend it. If the opponent gets wrong and he got hit by this, he likes to have 2 hits, and then he'll, of course, meaty with drills into 5H or into run up 2K or something like that to buy a lot of time. But assuming the opponent blocks this, now his favorite things to do, he pretty much does like 2 different things, right? If he doesn't have meter, that is. He'll either do 2K2D and then try to break the law and get out of there. And I guess depending on the character, it can be kind of hard to punish that. But then the other thing he'll do is he'll delay, or he'll mix up the timing for canceling 2D into 214S. So if the opponent is really in tune and they're really trying to take their turn, because they know that you're out of Eddie, so there's not a whole lot Zato can threaten you with. I mean, even if you challenge, what's the worst that could happen if he doesn't have meter? It's not that big of a deal to challenge, right? You need to try to take your turn. It's a more dangerous to like let him just freely back away and get Eddie back. So he knows you want to challenge after this, especially if he delays a little bit. But if you get counter hit by this, it literally just launches the opponent. I'll show you. It launches the opponent into like this really good knockdown. So what happens is he, against Euro Legion, he went for that last ditch mix up. He went to 2K2D, he's like, fuck, he got blocked. But then he'd like delayed, got a counter hit with this. Now he all of a sudden he meaties that knockdown with drill, and then jails that into either 5H. Assuming you have Eddie back, you can, as long as you've bought enough time, you can jail it into this. But I don't think he had Eddie back. I think he got meaty this. It was plus like 10 at least. And then he just ran up and kind of stalled out a little bit. I think he did meaty this, ran up with 5K, did this, and now he backed away. By the time Euro Legion realizes it, he already jumps, covered his landing with JH, made it really hard to approach, and now he has Eddie back. He can just start his pressure again. I don't know exactly what happened in this match, but this is his kind of offensive structure. Very often, if he doesn't have any meter, it's like right at the beginning of the match or something, he'll go for like one last mix-up instead of just unsummoning, because unsummoning is it can be very risky if you do it incorrectly, or you give up a mix-up opportunity if you do it correctly and make your opponent block frog or something. But instead of unsummoning, a lot of times he'll just gamble with that one last mix-up and either go for like a tick throw or something, but actually oftentimes he just plays it safe, backs away in any way possible. Sometimes he'll literally just break the law out and then just walk back and wait for Eddie to respawn. Okay, so this next setup I think will happen in round 4 versus Euro Legion. This is something I'm going to start doing a whole bunch. Is Zato's blue Roman cancel fuzzy setup. So again, I don't know if it's new to the patch, but I learned about it with the new patch. Basically, anytime you can dash or jump cancel a move, you can cancel straight into blue Roman cancel, which gives you a ton of frame advantage. So the new, I guess, fad with Zato is you get the opponent to block an overhead, and this works even if the opponent is trying to crouch. You get them to block a jump in, and then it forces standing long enough for you to go for this fuzzy. Like that, okay? So that's a fuzzy overhead that they're forced to stand. So it's like an instant overhead. Basically, I don't think it's reactable. So you either go for 2D or like a dash 2K for your low, or you do that instant overhead for the high. So it's really good mix-up that leads to a knockdown, and you don't need Eddie to go for the high-low mix-up. It's just works entirely on its own. So one thing I noticed Gobou doing is he'll push you to the corner and use that last mix-up. I think his exact mix-up was like this. And then he did jump and then went for the high-low. So it is already a high-low. So it's just layers on layers. He basically pushed to the corner like that, and then went high instead of low. I already showed you the low, right? He went the last setup I showed. He did the empty jump and went 2K2D. This time, since he already showed that option, he did the empty jump. He did the land into JD and then went for this fuzzy setup. Like that. And then you get the instant overhead into knockdown. And then, of course, if you get that knockdown, you're going to be doing meaty drill and then running up and kind of pressuring and stalling out for Eddie to come back. So I mentioned setups that use empty summon, the new empty summon into 236K to save Eddie meter. Gobou also takes advantage of using empty summon into 236S to get the frog that costs less meter, discount frog, to go for extra setups. Now the main time, he'll do this in neutral, but the main time he does it is when he gets a wall break super. So, he'll do some like unsummon setup, or he'll wall break with this super to get his Eddie meter back. The opponent has a hard knockdown, and pretty much he never goes and runs up in meaties with 5H or anything like that. The only setup he pretty much ever does on wall break super, and he gets a lot of wall break supers, is empty summon, move Eddie forward, and then he'll either empty summon and meaty right away with Pierce, like that, or he will try to gamble with one of the other ones. So, or he'll do this, and then he'll do 236S instead. Won't meaty, but it'll catch the opponent doing just about anything else, right? So the threat of meaty, the threat of meaty Pierce is already enough to kind of prevent the opponent from being too risky. But if they do try to jump, he also has this to go for, right? So he uses the fact that it's discounted to allow him to get 2 rounds of spikes. So it'll look something like this. He'll do this. And then it gives him one of those options. Now he has meter positive bonus, so he almost certainly has a bar after this, right? So this is the time where he'll do something like this, I got Red Roman cancel. But, this is like the perfect, an actually practical and viable opportunity to be able to go for this blue Roman cancel, fuzzy mix up, or to go for some other variant. Like, for example, he could go empty jump 5K, right? Do the blue Roman cancel trick off of this, do the blue Roman cancel trick off of this, and then go for like dust, which would then combo into 2K2D. Or at that point, if the opponent is only 1 hit away from dying, he can go for like a dust and RC and try to wall break and just get the kill. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention. So here's, I know I keep talking about like whether you use the RC before dust or after dust, right? When you're trying to get dust mix after you've run out of eddy meter. But I mentioned like one of the downsides to using RC after dust is that you can't get a knockdown, or at least that's what I thought. That if you do 5D into dust, that you're kind of locked into launching the opponent. I guess that in itself could be a knockdown if you just let the opponent fall, for example. But actually, Gobou has this other setup where he'll do, instead of red Roman cancel after dust, he'll do purple Roman cancel after dust, and the dust kind of causes you to like slump. It's kind of like one of like Soul's close slash or like Giovanna's close slash. I think a lot of characters have it where they'll be airborne for certain frames and then they'll land again, but they're still like in the combo state. So he'll do this. I'll see if I can show you. No guard. So he'll hit with dust and then do purple Roman cancel. And then wait for you to like not be launched anymore and do close slash 2D. So I thought that was really interesting too. He did pull that out against Hero Legion once or twice. I think in round 6. All right, so I think that pretty much covers everything I wanted to mention, or everything I noticed from the Kumite. I probably went a little longer than I wanted it to go. I thought about like making this like a nice and clean guide, but I had a lot of work this week, so I wanted to just record it for one take and kind of just get all my thoughts out. But yeah, so one thing I'm not mentioning in this guide, I mostly just mentioned his setups and what he would do on knockdowns and offense. But most of his hits that he got were off of defense, right? He just had like incredibly good awareness. He was instant blocking moves and strings. He was always backdashing, and he had just really, really, really good situational awareness where he would get some throw or knockdown and then snowball that into just an offensive lead by making really good reads on offense, baiting YRC and burst and whatnot. So yeah, it takes a lot more to be like a top tier Zato than just learning the setups, but I was impressed by how simple and clean his gameplay was. I never felt like he was going for anything overly complicated or something I couldn't understand. I felt like I always was able to see the merits of what he was doing and notice when he was mixing something up or when he anticipated the opponent would jump or adapt to one setup. He would go for another setup that would cover the backwards, like cover the things that he wasn't covering before. Did a really good job of rotating his options. But I mean, it was just incredibly clean and incredibly simple, which always makes me excited to practice the character, because that's what I like so much about it. There's so much stuff to do, but it's not like completely unattainable, like some other characters, not necessarily in this game, but in other games can feel at times. I always feel like it's worth putting in the time to learn this character, and that anyone can do it. You just got to start somewhere and add on, piece by piece. You can go really far with just a few tools and not have to worry about learning every punish and every setup to be successful with the character. So hopefully this helps you guys. I want to see if I can throw these videos together and put it up on YouTube. I'll see if I can, make as much content as I can in between work. See you guys.